The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Going.
Hello, Ashish.
How
Happy
are you?
day. I'm good. I'm doing well. How are you,
Uh,
my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. Those of you who don't know, Lee has just been through, as of this recording, a pretty nasty hurricane, and is still here and got her power back and whatnot. But there's some that are obviously not as fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
they're
Yep.
they're what? Well, I mean, how are you? How are you holding up? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So I was lucky. I had a generator that had not been used in 25 years that started on the first pull. We had
Oh my
serviced it
God.
about a year ago, yeah.
Okay.
But we started it the night before. And because I am such a geek, the one thing I can truly celebrate is that we never lost internet. So shout out to AT&T Fiber because my little generator that could powered us with internet, which meant that our house was command central for several other families as well. So we had a big
Um,
old time, but we're all, I think, happy to be back in our own homes now with our
that's
own
right.
internet. So
You were probably the most popular person in the neighborhood for a little bit, weren't
I
you?
was. I had neighbors all around me latching on to my Wi-Fi, giving out my password like candy.
That's awesome. So have you changed the password yet?
No, I've still got some neighbors who don't have AT&T. They have the other company that shall remain unnamed. And who knows when they'll get their internet back. So yeah, I've still got people piggybacking off of it.
That one, I think that company is about people who drink rum, right?
People who
Or
drink.
or some it ends with a word that rhymes with fast.
No,
Not the
well, we don't call it that around here, but yes,
Oh,
yes, I think
that's
that's
the
the same
one.
one.
That's the
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, note to them if they're listening, maybe think about actually burying your cable underground versus having it go on some little, basically putting it together with tie wire.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah. Just a suggestion.
Just a suggestion. But yeah, no, and I tell you, Southern hospitality at its finest. It's been really great
Absolutely.
seeing all these
Well,
people
I
come
mean,
out.
we whenever we've had the storms come through here, same thing. I mean, it seems like my house becomes that central place. Well, we have a
Mm-hmm.
generator. Can we charge this? Yeah, bring it on by. Bring it on
Mm-hmm.
by. F Funny story for us, we actually, when we moved, and this is me geeking out, I started looking at all the emergency grids. Where's the fire station? Where's the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Where's this? And then we chose where to move based on that. Of course, I wasn't always the most popular person for making that decision. But I tell you what, when you get your power back quickly, you look like $1 million.
Yeah, it paid off for you. I did intentionally buy where I live because our power's underground, but it didn't help. And I mean,
Ours, yeah,
90% of the people in our area lost power. So, but
yeah, yeah,
but
ours
yeah,
is underground too.
smart man.
We had a tornado actually touch down beyond our house and basically the power lines are underground, but they go up, I guess, to a transformer.
Hmm.
And it basically took a tree and threw the tree into the transformer. So the whole neighborhood, the whole area lost power, and it was basically
Whoa.
our fault.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
our
Your
tree.
tree.
Yeah. So in the immortal words of Taylor Swift, hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
It's me. Oh
I think
boy.
I have to give her the other kidney for saying that now.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe so. No.
so, so, well, speaking of Taylor Swift, we've been talking about raising global citizens, basically
Hmm.
raising kids who aren't going to be a-holes,
Yeah.
for lack of better words, right? And
Yep.
oh wait, you know what? We're not censored. We can actually say it.
Yes, it's true. We can.
Yeah. All right. I'll see if I
You go
want to.
first. Yeah, see if you want to. See
See, I
how
mean,
how it
hey,
goes as we
hey,
go.
let's find out the FCC is actually listening to us. Let's actually go ahead and say it and see if they come and calling us. What do you think?
Okay,
All right.
I think. Do you want to say it together on
Yeah, we'll
three?
say it together. We'll say it together. One,
One,
two,
two,
three.
three. Assholes.
Assholes. There it is. Okay. Anyway, so now we're talking about raising kids that are global citizens that are not that actually
Mm-hmm.
are self-aware, self-sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
and that are genuinely good people that understand that servitude and looking out for your fellow human being is the right way to live a life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before somebody says this, no, we're not talking about socialism. Before you even accuse me of that, we're not talking about that. We're talking about simply just being aware right? And it has nothing to do with religion. These aren't principles of a specific religion.
Mm-hmm.
These are principles of life, right? These are
Mm-hmm.
principles of how we are supposed to be. It's not always the case, but how we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So last episode, we were talking about 252 days, the
Mm-hmm.
amount of time it takes. Basically, when you're taking vacation with your children, if you count up your vacation days, not their vacation days, but yours, you have 252 days to make an impression on your child. And we talked about wildebeest, right? The fact that the wildebeest is standing, when it gives birth, that wildebeest is standing within seconds, is standing up within minutes, walking within hours, and moving with the herd within days. And at some point, the wildebeest, and I've seen this, just cuts bait and
Mm-hmm.
says, "All right, you're on your own, whatever happens to you." Sea turtles is another example, right? Lays the eggs and leaves. All right, you're on your own, right?
Yeah.
The sea turtles have no time to shape what kind of offspring, how life is viewed. We have 252 days to shape that life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot of time.
Mm-mm. Nope, it's not.
Since that recording, I've now given 3 speeches in different areas talking about that very topic. And every single time it's the same first reaction. That can't be right. Then a second, then quick math and go, oh my, that
Mm-hmm.
is right. And even one saying, no, it's not 252, it's 248.
Oh, wow.
Okay, you're right, it's 248. But
Yeah.
it still talks about that. So I want to talk about you on this
Mm.
episode because this is the one thing. Those of you who've been listening since the beginning, you know that I admire this woman. She's blazed the trail for women to work in expedition cruising. She's blazed the trail for women in the Coast Guard. But I actually have to remember the fact that she is one amazing mother.
Oh.
And I think it's pretty cool. And if it's all right with you, I'd like to start with the fact that you, for the most part, were a single mom raising 2 amazing girls. So
Yeah.
I want the world to hear any part of the story you want to share,
Oh.
and because I think a lot of people can learn from you.
Oh, you're so nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plush.
Yeah, my husband died when my kids were 10 and 11. My kids are 20 months apart, but he was sick for since they were about 5 or 6. So, I mean, he was participated, but I definitely had to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But yeah, so we just have kind of been the three amigos since that time moving forward. And I had neighbors who were great help. And then when I moved to South Carolina, we moved to be closer to family, but it's not easy. I applaud any parent that's out there doing it by themselves, or even if they have a partner who maybe who travels a lot, or is not always able to be present, or the breadwinner or whatever. It does often fall to one parent to do more
Right.
heavy lifting. So
Well, and when they were that young, when were you enlisted with the Coast Guard?
oh God, that was before them. So yeah, I came late to the party of motherhood. I had my oldest daughter was 38, and then I turned 40 the year my
Oh my
second
gosh.
daughter was born. So I'm an older mom. So I'd lived a full life and career and all of that. In fact, when I was in the Coast Guard, I remember it was right at the start of Desert Storm, I think. Desert Storm came first, right?
Yeah.
Um, happened while I was enlisted, and I remember getting a copy of the Navy Times, and I watched on the picture. There was a picture of this Navy woman handing her baby infant over to her mother because she was getting ready to be deployed, and I had to make a decision at that point. I just said I can't ever be in a position where I have to sign my parental rights over to someone else, in service of my country. I applaud people who do it. It's a very hard decision. I don't know how they do it. But when my 4 years were up, I had to get out. But then, fast forward, it still took me another, 12 to 13 years to decide I was ready to be a mom.
Well,
But
and
yeah.
This is the thing, because if you go even further forward, you have a student who's at Purdue right now.
M-
Uh,
Me, no, I've Clemson Tigers.
oh,
Go
Clemson. I'm
Tigers.
sorry,
Go
Clemson Tigers.
Tigers. Yeah.
That's right. Sorry,
Yep.
Clemson. I just gave you a rival school, didn't I?
That's okay. We think highly of Purdue, but no, mine both graduate. Well, I've got one has already graduated from Clemson, and the other will
Yeah.
in another at the end of this semester.
So,
Yeah.
so think about this for a second. For those of you who are at the rivalry schools, that was the equivalent of Alabama and Florida, or Arizona and Arizona State, or if Duke and North Carolina. I am so
Well, if
sorry.
you had said USC and not the one in California, if you had said Carolina Gamecocks, then we'd have been
Oh,
might have been, but we're good. We're good.
wow. Okay. All right. Well, so I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. So I mean, and I've got a son who's actually in right now in like college throes, right? The
Mm-hmm.
applications are going out, and it's not easy, but
Mm-mm.
I again, I want our listeners to know, because those are your 252 days, right?
Yeah.
When your time was up, when you were done enlisted and you had to leave, right? So I want to make it clear to everybody that you were asked. That's it. Your term was up. You
Mm-hmm.
needed to leave.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you made a conscious decision, and you had these kids. What was vacation time like with your kids?
Oh, because my parents lived on the East Coast, we did a lot of back and forth to the East Coast. My kids, even as soon as I had to buy them tickets, they had frequent flyer numbers. So because we were doing a lot of back and forth, and
Mhm.
there were several trips I took with them only on airplanes with infant, a lap child and a kid in a booster, trying so hard not to be the parent with the screaming children. Um, it was effort. I remember how much effort that was
Yeah.
until they got to be a certain age. There is just so much effort required by a parent and
Hmm.
then now I look back on some of that and sheesh, of course they didn't remember it, any of that. Like they
Yeah.
don't remember some of those trips. They barely even remember the Disney trips when they were 5, but
Mm.
there was a lot of ground um, foundation being laid in all of that for how to just be a good human, even if they don't
Mhm.
remember the actual experiences then.
Were there any aha moments where it just felt like something clicked during a trip, after a trip, a vacation, that something just seemed to be different from that point forward with one of your daughters?
Yeah, I think I I I do know at some point they just got really good at getting through airports and carrying their own luggage and being proud of that and being so easy to travel with, but more so than that, I think just being comfortable meeting strange kids and playing with them,
Mhm.
that was something that I remember being happy
Okay,
about,
so you just drew a really cool picture, because I'll tell you why. After our last recording, I was talking to somebody about it, and that particular recording, that particular episode isn't live yet. It will be soon. Uh, but I was talking to somebody about that episode, about the topic,
Mhm.
and they didn't see the connection. They said, "Well, what does travel have to do with raising a child who's a good child?" I go, "What do
Mhm.
you mean?" I said, "It has everything to do with it. It's about teaching you what's not in the school books." You just played it forward. Your kids, you've talked so much about them, and the one word that I hear you say over and over again when you talk about them is independent.
Mhm.
They are completely independent. They are self-sufficient. They don't need anybody else.
Mhm.
And they understand the meaning of life, meaning that they may have book smarts, but they have a ton of street smarts.
Mhm.
That just said it right there. The
Yeah.
fact that they knew how to navigate through airports and carrying their own bags, comfortable talking to strangers that needed help. That's something that we did at our kids too. We've since the
Mhm.
age, I think our son, we put him on his first plane by himself at 10. Our daughter shortly, I think just this year, she's 12. We wanted her. Now they fly autonomously all the time,
Mhm.
going through airports, navigating, figuring out what to do. Even with the college applications, we've pretty much just gotten out of the way and said,
Mhm.
we'll overview it, but it's your responsibility. And they've owned up to it. My son has owned up to it. We challenged them, but it's what you just said. It's independent. You've got, again, daughters that are graduating from Clemson, and they're successful in their own right, and they've got
Mhm.
this career path in front of them that is just gonna it's gonna blaze a trail for this as well.
Mhm.
But it's one that is just out of this world because of the fact that, if you trace it all back, that aha moment you just said, they're going through airports, navigating through
Mhm.
airports, it did it. I tell
Yeah.
you, for me, this is where it fits, right? So for me, my daughter actually always used to ask, both my kids asked, like, what do you actually do? And I would explain to them what I do. I'm like, okay, okay, I would talk about the foundation and the work we do, and they, okay. I remember 2021. I had taken my family back to Colombia, and again, the story we've talked about a while, that just the amount of work we've done with helping fishermen, working with local organizations during the pandemic to give food to fishermen around Cartagena and whatnot. So we had gone out and we had gone with the Navy. You remember Abraham. So we
Mhm.
had gone with him and with the Navy and gone out and we're delivering water. And we got to Tierra Bomba. We were delivering supplies. And it wasn't just food, but it was clothes, shoes, everything. It wasn't delivering supplies like, oh, here's hand-me-outs. It was rather trying to use this as an alternative to conflict. Right. And it
Mhm.
was it was incredible. So here's what happened, right? We've talked to my daughter about sharing food. We've talked to my daughter about giving what you don't have and giving what you have and helping others. So we're sitting in this, I guess, football area, it's a soccer area, and we're sitting at the little coaches area and the team area on the bench. And they give these little packed lunches out. So my daughter's eating this sandwich, and she has a piece of chocolate cake.
Mhm.
And I still have this picture, and this local girl is sitting next to my daughter, and they're talking, not even saying a word, but they're talking with their eyes, but
Mhm.
they're not saying a word.
Mm.
Without us saying anything, my daughter reaches in and actually takes the whole cake and says, "Would you like this?" And
Oh,
gives her a cake, gives her this without saying anything. Now,
wow.
fast forward. Now it's funny. The newspaper put my daughter on the front page when he was there. Like, which one of
So
these doesn't look
sweet.
like it belongs? And put her picture there. But the aha moment was when we were walking back to the boat. She tugs on my arm and she says, "I understand what you do now." She was
Mhm.
9.
Mm.
She goes, "Now I understand what you do." Now you look at her now, and what she has a maternal instinct about her. That is her strongest trait, and we just enforced it. Your daughters have an independence trait about them that is incredible. And you
Mhm.
could see clearly how they enforced it. How old was your daughter when she had that aha moment where she started navigating the airport for the first time?
Well, I put them on airplane by themselves when they were 8 and 7, I think.
Yeah.
And you pay and
Yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
escorted out. But I think that, I mean, them just not being scared of that, like being ready to do that, and then telling me all the stories, and
Hmm.
they don't have any problem striking up conversations with the
Hmm.
person sitting beside them, and
Hmm.
they still do that sort of thing. But yeah, so probably it was about that age where I started seeing that the
Hmm.
seeds that had been planted were paying off. But your daughter, that story about your daughter also made me think she's just such a great ambassador for she left an impression on that little girl
Hmm.
and taught her a little bit about what it means, not only kindness, but what is an American.
Right.
Your daughter, now this little girl has an impression of what she thinks an
That's right.
American
That's right.
is,
And
you
it
know.
does. They never said one word,
Right.
but she came back and took a picture. And of course, we're all wearing masks at the
Oh.
time. Took her mask down. We started smiling with my daughter. Took a picture together.
Mhm.
They never said one word because she didn't
Yes.
speak any English. My daughter doesn't speak any Spanish, so they
Mhm.
didn't say one word, but they were speaking with their eyes and they were speaking with their actions. And as you said, like that was essentially it. And you know, it's you're gonna laugh at this. When you flew your daughter the first time. What did she tell you that she did on that plane? What did she talk to you about the plane?
Oh God.
What did she say to you? And I'll tell you what my son said.
So my daughter had actually been flying for a while at this point, but this one trip, she looked out the window the whole way, and when we landed, I'm sorry, I hope I don't I mean, like this is
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
anyway, she looked out the window the whole way, and then we got to where we were going, and a little while later she said, "Mama, I looked out the plane the entire time. I did not see heaven anywhere." I am not convinced that there is heaven, that heaven
Wow.
exists, because she did not
Wow.
see it out the plane. Because she thought for sure she was up in the sky. She should have seen heaven.
Wow.
So
That's
um,
profound.
that was profound and actually set her on a path that, I mean, I'm not one to try to force my children into any kind of belief,
Mhm.
religious or otherwise. And so I never,
But it's not about religion. It's
right,
not about
no.
what you've just what you again, you're proving the point that that person who was antagonizing me, what he was saying, well, what does one have to do with the other?
Yeah.
You just proved it again. You
Hmm.
taught her critical thinking.
Hmm.
That's what that is. It's not about conformity. It's about
Hmm.
critical thinking, right? And that if we can teach our children to be independent, if we
Hmm.
can teach them to be good human beings, if we can teach them to be global citizens, all of it comes back to critical thought,
It does.
asking the right question at the right place at the right time,
Hmm.
and knowing how to do that, when to do that, and to whom to do that with.
Hmm.
And that's right there. That's a
Hmm.
comment like that. Mine was nowhere near that profound. Mine was, hey, Dad,
You're
Dad,
safe.
I watched Deadpool. And he was 10. I got to watch Deadpool on the plane. And we were like, you're too young for that. He comes in and all of a sudden he goes, I got to watch Deadpool. And I looked at him, I go, you what? And he just looks at me and he goes, I watched Deadpool. And that started basically mimicking Careless Whisper, the, the
Oh my
the
gosh.
song and whatnot. So, but again, he did say other things as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
He flew again, and he would always ask, he would start examining the tail of the plane. Hey,
Mm.
Dad, is that a 737? Is that
Hmm.
an Airbus? Is that an Embraer? Is that just actually, as a matter of fact, just earlier this year, we were flying to India with my father's ashes, and as we're going, he said, is that a Dreamliner? Is that an A350? No, 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 it's a 777. Oh, how do you know? Well, look, oh yeah, yeah, the ruffled corners, the back of the engine. Yeah, yeah, okay, okay. He's identifying, and you know what happened? So I'm a car junkie, you know that.
Hmm.
I'm a car
Hmm.
nut.
Hmm.
So at his age, or probably younger, at basically 12, 14, I used to look at Corvettes. And I was like
Hmm.
probably 10 years old at the exhaust pipe. And I could tell you what year the Corvette was just by looking at the exhaust pipe. This is the 80s when they all look the same, right? They didn't change the
Wow.
design for like 12 years. I
Yeah.
could look at a square exhaust pipe versus a round exhaust pipe, where the exhaust pipe is. Okay, that's what would tell me. And then not only that, is this a ZR1? Is this a Z06? Is this a Grand Sport? Is this a Stingray? Is this I could tell them all apart from looking at the exhaust pipe. And here's my son at the airport looking at the wings at the tail wing of an airplane and figuring out just from small characteristics what plane it is. Now, somebody listening might say that sounds pretty trivial. It's not. If
Hmm.
you are that astute to figure out what kind of plane is there, or that astute to figure out which Corvette that is based on the exhaust pipe, then don't you think you're going to be really self-aware? Don't you think you're
Hmm.
going to be aware of your surroundings no matter what you're doing? Don't you think that when you're older in life, you're going to actually pay attention to the small details? You're going to pay attention to what you see, and more importantly, to what you don't see. You're going to pay attention to what somebody says, and more importantly, what they don't say. You're going to
Hmm.
start figuring out traits in people, traits in experiences, traits in locations, traits in places that are going to help shape your decision-making tree
Hmm.
and your quick decision-making tree, how fast you can make that decision. That's huge.
Yeah.
And your daughter's the same way, right? I don't see heaven. Why don't I see heaven? And then it's the question of, okay, is it real? I'm not convinced it's real. Show me it's real. Could you
Hmm.
imagine that person either as a litigator, that person in somewhere, whatever conversation, whatever frame of work she ends up doing, doesn't matter if it's a litigator, if it's a teacher, if it's in business, if it's in medicine, but the question that everybody should ask, prove it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why she ended up getting a master's degree in mathematics, and she loves math because she says math doesn't lie.
Right?
So,
I say the exact same thing.
yeah, numbers
Numbers
don't
don't
lie.
lie unless you try to make them, and they still don't lie.
Yeah, right, right.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Think about this, okay? And I'm not going to get political here because this isn't the place for it, and I frankly don't
Hmm.
care. But think about this. We just watched a presidential debate and a vice presidential debate, whereas of this recording, an election year.
Hmm.
we're talking about, and you keep hearing these talking heads about consequential decisions, and this is about our democracy, and this is about, they're wrong. It's
Mm.
not about our democracy. It's not about policy. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about our country. It's about critical thinking.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Do you know I have yet to hear one moderator. One moderator. I have yet to hear one, and that's not just this election cycle. We're go back to the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to hear one moderator say, I don't actually believe your answer. Can you please elaborate and prove it to me?
Right.
Could you imagine where it would come in? If two world leaders are sitting around, they're talking about nuclear proliferation,
Mm-hmm.
and one says, okay, we'll stop doing X, Y, and Z. We won't enrich your uranium anymore. And the other says, I don't believe you. Prove it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I'm going to send inspectors in, I'm going to do that. Prove it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many people don't use that phrase, and is the most effective phrase out there? How do I know you're telling me the truth? Prove it to me.
Yeah.
I just helped somebody. I just helped somebody buy a car,
Mm.
and as your daughter says, numbers don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Before this person got into the haggling, before they got into, it wasn't even that bad. It was pretty easy. Before they got into it, when he called me, he goes, listen, my dad said that you're good with this. Can you help me? And this was right just after the rate cuts happened. The most recent interest rate cuts happened. So I asked this person, I said, do me a favor, go in and just ask, well, the rates have just been cut. What happens to the interest rate? If I'm buying the car? What happens if I'm taking a loan? What happens to the interest rate? And he didn't understand at the time. And so he's like, well, why am I going to ask it? If it's going to be a half a point here or there, I'm going to argue over $50 and da 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 da. And his dad was like, what's $50 times X number of months? It's a lot of money. And da, da. I told him, I said, just go and ask. Don't. You have nothing to lose. I said, if you want to make the deal afterwards, go right ahead. But I just want to know that answer. It's for me. Just go do it. It's for my own understanding. Please go do it. He ended up coming out, getting some convoluted answer, went somewhere else, got the car he wanted, got it for less money, and it was it was a better version of the car. Then he asked me about 2 weeks later. He said, why did you ask that question? I said, it had nothing to do with interest rates. He goes, what was it about? I just wanted to see if he was willing to tell the truth.
Right.
And the truth is that, yeah, and the truth is that because the month hadn't turned, there's no way they could have known the impact of it. There's no way they could have known what was going to happen. And the right answer was, we're not sure yet. You might want to consider waiting, but it's the end of the month, and this is the case, and just being honest about it. He didn't do it.
Wow.
And he stopped and he goes, that question was about truth and false? I said, yes, that question was simply about whether or not this person was capable of telling the truth. It had nothing to do with interest rates because there was nothing that person could tell me that I didn't already know. So I just wanted to find out if he was going to tell the truth or not.
And so what made him, even though he didn't know that's what he was trying to achieve, he did move on to a different dealership?
Because he didn't like the answer.
Okay.
He got a convoluted answer about, well, we'll have to see how it works out, and we have to see, and why don't you think about, well, here's a number that works. Let's start from here and tell me what number works for you. And it went right to the negotiation instead of simply understanding. And back to critical thought. Your daughter, probably, I would be willing to bet your daughter is likely a strong critical thinker. Because she had that question about heaven, I'm willing to bet that if somebody says something to her and she can ruse out that something doesn't really add up, she'll call it out in a second and go, that doesn't make sense. Am I right?
Oh, yes.
My job here is done. My job here is done.
Right. And she's been like that since she was little. I mean, that's just baked into her. That's who she is. And always has been.
She's that audience member the magicians hate.
Yeah.
She's that one, isn't she? No, wait. It's in your pocket. No, there's no way you could have done that. No, it's here. No, there's no way that thing disappeared. It's got to be here. Have you ever taken her to a magic act?
I don't think I have.
You need to.
I need to.
You need to.
Yeah.
Please take it to one the magician, and warn him or warn her and say, look, she's a critical thinker. It's no offense, but I just wanted, if you can play along and get their permission, obviously. I think I would love to see what happened. I
She'd
would
probably
love to
lose her
see.
mind. I don't know. At this point, probably when she was a kid, that would have been a good thing to do with her.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
in this world, you know, and look, I mean, I have a daughter too, and you've got two amazing daughters, and in this world, we always talk about gender equality. We always talk about women's rights. It seems to come up every single year, election cycle, you name it, it keeps coming up.
Hmm.
And the thing that is just that I notice every single time is this notion that if we just taught our children to think critically, if we just taught them to just be self-aware and to being independent, and that's by letting them do things that have nothing to do with school,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like flying a plane by themselves,
Hmm.
on a plane by themselves, or you know, just listening, stopping and listening, right?
Yeah.
And and if they say something, don't answer them. Just embrace the silence and just sit there and wait and just stare at them.
Yeah.
Just wait, right? That my my father used to get really nervous very quickly. We would play golf together, and we couldn't play golf anymore together because he got so self-conscious of the people behind us.
Oh.
We got and it was and honestly it stemmed from the fact that he thought because of the color of his skin, because of how he was treated as when he was younger, that we
Hmm.
were less than, so we
Hmm.
needed to get out of the way. And so I used to stop and tell him, I will hit this ball from here and they're going to wait, and if they don't like it they can go around us, but they're going to wait. So
Hmm.
he and I used to get to arguments about that, and
Mm.
he's like, no, you have to, you know, just move. I'm like, no, no, no,
Oh.
no, no.
Yeah.
And I remember he as we, you know, as I grew up, he became much more critical as well.
Mm.
Started becoming much more of a critical thinker, started asking questions the right way, started doing different things. You fast forward, and my son's asking those questions now, right? When we had gone through, I remember my son was 5 and my daughter was 1, and we were flying to Costa Rica. My daughter was crying on the plane,
Mm.
right? And you know, and I feel for those parents of the
Hmm.
crying baby, because it's
Yeah.
not their fault. It's pressure in
No.
the ears, it's something, but to get these dirty looks, you know, from people there.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget this. My wife, God, she was so angry at me, but it worked. So I kept noticing this woman staring at me, and I think about that now, because if my father was there, he would have basically looked at her and said, Give it to me. Let me quiet her down. Let me quiet her down. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay." He would have been self-conscious. I, on the other hand, looked at her, took my daughter, handed it to this woman, handed my daughter to this woman. She goes, "Oh," I go, "Well, I'm sorry her crying's bothering you. I'm pretty incompetent as a father. I clearly can't figure out how to make her stop crying. But you seem to be looking over here a lot. And I'm guessing that you have kids. Maybe you can help me. Here, take her. Maybe she needs
Yeah.
to be burped. I've tried already, but maybe she can be you." And she just, "Oh, no, 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 no. It's no, 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 no. Oh, gosh, no, no." And just looked down, wouldn't look up the rest of the way. You know what? It was like 500 pounds lifted off my shoulders immediately.
Yeah, I bet.
My wife relaxed immediately. And you know what happened 5 seconds afterwards?
Baby, your daughter
Stop
calmed down.
crying,
Right. Because
calm
she didn't
down,
feel your
stop.
energy anymore. Yeah.
Right,
Your
right.
frustration.
And my son looked over and he saw the whole thing. He didn't say anything. He was 5. Do you know he brought that up 6 years later?
Really?
He
Wow.
brought that up 6 years later, and he said, you know, because we're talking about something, and we talked about, you know, not being afraid. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about not being afraid, and we talked about, you know, making sure that we don't just cower in fear,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to be willing. If we believe in something, we got to be willing to walk through brick walls.
Mm-hmm.
And if we and we shouldn't ever feel less than, that nobody should ever make us feel like we're not good enough. And he said, he looked at me, he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I know." I go, "What do you mean, you know?" He goes, "Well, remember when you gave my sister to this random woman because she was crying on the airplane." I go, "You remember that?" She goes, "Yeah, I saw the whole thing." I said, "You were 5." He goes, "I watched the whole thing happen." And then he goes, "I plan on doing that to my child as well."
Yeah, it's awesome. They're always watching us.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
And
interesting.
that's what this is about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that brings me to this point. When we talk about traveling with our family, what's the one thing we have with our kids when we travel with them that we don't have when we're at home? Think about it. The one
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
What's it?
it's undivided time, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Undivided attention.
Mhm.
Whether they are watching their social media or streaming something, they are still listening to everything that's happening. And I
Mhm.
know this for a fact because we had gone somewhere as a family, and usually with my family, we'll pick like Thanksgiving, right? And we won't go anywhere per se to vacation, but we'll go somewhere for a week where nobody's allowed to make any plans. And the week is no plans can be made. I
Mm.
like waking up early. I wake for me, 5 a.m. is sleeping in, right? So
Wow.
it's nobody can make plans, right? Everybody gets up when they want to get up, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do that day. If we're driving somewhere, we'll take our time getting there because we have no reason to get there early, and that's it. And it's because we spend our life on agendas. We spent our entire waking minutes, waking hours following a schedule, following an agenda, following this. Okay, I gotta do this now, gotta do that now, gotta do that now, gotta do that now. So we need 1 week. Now, the last few Thanksgivings, I've been traveling. So I've not been here. This is the first
Mm.
year I'm going to be home. So I told my family, I said, same thing. We're going to go back to doing that. And what'll happen is my son will be, and I tell him, you want to stream, you want to be on social media, go ahead, knock yourself out. You want to play video games, go. Do what you want
Mhm.
to do. That week, turn the brain off for that week. Just do whatever. And he was playing something, or he was playing something or watching something, and my wife and I were talking about something. And she's like, and my wife said, like, well, we've done that before. And I go, no, we haven't. All of a sudden, the peanut gallery. Yes, we have, Dad. Remember when this? Remember it was like 3 years ago. And I looked at him and I go, where'd you come from? And he was listening.
He was listening.
He was listening. When we got back from these trips, they get it. First of all, they're rejuvenated,
Mhm.
right? To take on more, but they're actually now coming back and they're more self-aware.
Mhm.
They're more self-aware of what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. They're more self-aware of what's there. It's incredible in terms of it, right? Give you a prime example, right? So where we live, we're fortunate we can see all the rocket launches, the SpaceX launches. We get to
That's so
see all of
cool.
them. So we get to come out, we can see all of them. They're fantastic. So I used to bring my kids out when they were much younger and say, okay, this rocket, like we have one that's launching tomorrow morning. Like, okay, so I would time it out. Come on, we're going to come back. We're going to watch this launch. It's going to be from here. I showed them where to stand if I'm not here, and I gave him the app that we use to check the launches and whatnot. My son on his own figured out where to go on a different part of town where it's completely unblocked. There's nothing that is blocking, obstructing your view, and he gets a full view, and not because of the launch, because he knows that SpaceX, he's more interested in watching the booster land on the moving platform. And that's what he wants to
Wow.
watch. He figured that all out on his own.
That's so cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that just started from taking him to go watch a rocket launch when he was 6.
Yeah. He became curious.
Mhm.
Something that came to mind about travel that just remembered that we have done for years and still do as a family when we travel. And we started this when the kids were young. Everybody gets to whether we're going for a weekend or a week, everybody gets to have one non-negotiable thing that they want to do on the trip that
Mhm.
everybody else will do with them.
Mhm.
Everybody gets their one thing, and
Mhm.
we are committed to that, and what that's done for us is it makes the kids have to do research about where we're going to be and what we're going to do.
Mhm.
And sometimes they might be specific, but sometimes it might be something like, I want to ride a horse or I
Right.
want to do a whatever.
Right.
um, Getting that buy-in and patience, because then you have to share. You have to be willing to do what everybody else wants to
That's
do
right.
too, in
That's right.
order to get the payoff for your own thing. So, do you guys do anything
100%.
like that when you travel?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so it's funny. Everybody, when we wake up during that Thanksgiving, we'll wake up and start, what are we doing today? And
Mm,
then everybody gets to decide something. I always win because I get up early. So I tell them, like, between the hours of 5 and 9, I
hmm
get to do what I want to do every single day. So it's quite all right. I get 4 hours of what I want to do every single day because nobody's awake. So by default, I still win.
You're winning.
Uh, I'm
Yeah.
winning. So like last year, we had gone to Peru for my son's birthday. So we planned the whole thing around his birthday, and it just happened to coincide with spring break.
hmm
So we didn't tell him what we were doing. We just knew we were going to
Mm.
Peru and going back to Machu Picchu and everything else. I took him paragliding for his birthday. Didn't tell him we were doing it, and then went ahead and said, all right, at like 10 o'clock in the morning, said, all right, this is your birthday surprise. We're going paragliding. We go, what? Put parachutes on, waited for the vortex to form, and then we took off.
hmm
Uh, And it was mind-blowing. He was texting his friends before he left, and he was so
Mhm.
excited and what he was doing. That was what all he wanted. He didn't really need to do anything else. He wanted to focus on that. Right.
Wow.
So once he did
Cool.
that, he was good with anything else we were doing. My daughter was all into, well, I want to meet the people. I want to talk to some of our guides she loves some of our guides that are there and
Mhm.
she just wants to hang out with them. So she'll go talk to them or some of our country managers. She wants to hang out with them. She wants to basically just walk around and
Mhm.
whatnot. And my daughter, my wife was, she wants to go see some of the pashminas, wants to go see some of the, not the pashminas, the alpaca wool, like the clothes made from alpaca and
Ah,
and whatnot. Just wants to go see it, just wants to go see what this feels like and what that's like. And then she's a history buff. She
okay.
really wants to get into the history, right? So we had gone to Peru in 2018. I'd been before, but it was her first time for them. And there was a minor train accident on the way
Mm,
up to Machu Picchu. And we were on that train. We were on one of the trains. So we never got to get to Machu Picchu because of the fender bender on the track.
mm,
So this was the way to, okay, well, let's go back and try it again and go to Machu Picchu. Got there, loved it. They were taking pictures and listening to every single word and just blown away by the history that was there.
mm,
My
mm.
son loved it, but he couldn't stop talking about the paragliding.
Yeah,
Right.
that was
So
his thing. Yeah.
yeah, so for us, we'll plan to go somewhere, we'll do something, but then we won't ever say, okay, we're gonna do this today and that today, that today. We'll just basically with our family, if we're gonna go somewhere that's international, we're gonna plan an itinerary like that's an adventure we normally plan. They make it their own. Each day automatically becomes their own. And what's really cool is because of the fact that, I mean, look, I travel a lot, so I'm not home as much as I want to be, but when I'm
Mhm.
home, I'm there.
Mhm. That's great.
So when we do travel, what's really cool is that our family's gotten in sync pretty well. So we don't actually have to plan whose day it is. It just organically forms.
That's so great.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Just last week, this will be interesting for you. You'll appreciate this. Just last week, I was having a conversation with my daughter, and I was telling her, I said, your brother's leaving soon to go to college. I said, our house is going to change. Our
Mhm.
relationship is going to change after he goes. It's going to be different after he's gone. And something just told me to ask it, right? Because I overheard my son telling her, well, sit up when you do your homework, and she was lying down.
Mm.
Do rapid recall, copy your notes. She's in middle school, copy your notes,
Mhm.
giving her tips, and he was doing it voluntarily, right? Use this, and she wasn't doing it. So
Mm.
something just caused me to ask her. I
Thank you
said,
for
"Do you
listening
think
to The
you're not as
Sustainable
smart as your
Voice.
brother?"
If you have a success story
I
of
don't know
your
why I
own,
asked that,
please reach out and share it
but just
with
out of the
us.
blue. But
Would
she
love to
stops for
hear
a
from
second.
you. See you
She
next
tears
time.
up,
Oh,
and then she says, "Yeah, sometimes." I
yeah.
said, "Who told you that?" And she goes, "No." I said, "Did nobody in this house has said that?" She goes, "No, no, no, no. Your teachers have said that." She goes, "No." So why? When did you think? She goes, "Well, last year." I said, "Why do you think that?" Well, he's so good at these subjects. I stopped her and I said, "In your life, nobody should ever be able to tell you that you're not good at something, that you're not good enough." Because people told me that my whole life.
Mhm.
Right. So I
Mhm.
stopped and said, nobody should ever be able to tell you that. And nobody should tell you that. And if they do, you need to use that as motivation, not as a distractor. And this is the case. And I talked about our travels together. I said,
Mhm.
look at all the places we've seen. Look at who we visited when we were in Guatemala, when we were in Peru, when we were in Morocco, when we were here. Look at all the places that we've been to and all the experiences we've had. And then I stopped her for a second. I said, let's talk about, in your last year in elementary school, your teacher left halfway through the year. A new teacher comes in. You've got to teach yourself and learn. You were behind the curve, right? Your class was behind the curve. So you got to catch up. For somebody who keeps saying you're not good at math, you did really well on the test to get you into the advanced classes. You did that. That was all you. Your brother didn't have that. Your brother had it all handed to him.
Yeah.
He worked for it, but he had the good teacher. He had everything. So nobody taught you how to study. We had to teach yourself how to study. You did all that. And now here you are. And I stopped and I said, the only person in this house that doesn't know that you're the smartest out of all of us is you.
Oh.
Everybody here sees clearly that while your brother is doing very well, you're leagues ahead of him and all of us. You just need to find out for yourself. She
Yeah.
stopped. She just broke down.
Oh.
And she broke down and hey, I'm a total girl dad.
Oh.
I'm a total girl dad. So that's the phrase? Is that the phrase?
Yeah, I
Girl
think
dad,
that's
right? Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So she got emotional and Ever since that moment, our relationship has changed.
That's so great.
It just, where she's willing to work harder. She's willing to do things because now she believes.
Good.
And we
That's
were
fantastic.
and we were referencing the trips we took together. We were referencing the experiences we had. I reminded her that at 6 years old, she went climbed the Via Ferrata in Peru and went ziplining at 6 years old. I mean, I told her about that. I
Yes.
reminded her of that. I said, look at that. I said, you were 6 when you did that,
Hmm.
and explained to her all the different things. I said, at 8 years old, I threw you on top of a donkey in Guatemala at these hidden ruins of Mirador, that because no other way to get there. And here you are riding this donkey with mom while we're going to explore these temples that nobody's ever seen before. That was you. That was all you. You went ahead and did it. You weren't scared. You didn't worry like, oh, you went along with it. I said,
Hmm.
look at that. Look at all the things that you've done because of it. And I told her, I'm like, that same trip, I took you up the top of an active volcano, lifted up rocks, gave you marshmallows, and go, here, let's do s'mores. And she remembered that. And I said, and then I stopped her and I said, all the things that you've had to go through, and you're only 12, so you're going to go through a lot more obstacles. And I didn't even talk to her about the skin color yet. I've
Hmm.
had that conversation with my son about his skin color and said, look, you're going to have to face this too. So your skin's going to have to be thicker than most because
Hmm.
you're going to deal with this as well. You're going to get it on two sides. You're going to get some people who think that you're out to basically be a terrorist, and you got some people who think that you're out because you're out to take their jobs. You're going to have people that come to you and think that you are less than. And I said, it's happened to me and it could happen to you. I pray it doesn't. But if it does, you have to endure. I
Yes.
haven't had that conversation with her yet, but she's ready for it because now she believes what we believe and what we know, which is that she is the smartest out of all of us in the house. She just has to work for it.
And resilient and courageous
Yeah.
and able to get through any sort of situation. So
Do you
sounds
know
like
when
she's
I
got grit.
she's got grit.
Yeah.
And funny enough, my son on his own, I gave him this book called Grit to Good.
Mm.
Or good, sorry, Good to Grit, because I met the author at a conference and I just fell in love with the book. And I said, here's this book. And he just took it upon himself to read it. So funny story about my daughter. She had basically, she was 5. We were on a ferry going to
Hmm.
Vancouver Island, right? We're on a ferry
Yep.
going to Vancouver Island, and so I love ferries. So I'm taking them around this boat. And like, look, the cars are parked down here, and this is where we're going. This is what we're doing, and everybody's like, oh, this is so cool and whatnot. And you know, my daughter comes across this child who's probably 11 months old that is just crying
Oh.
and with the mom. And all I see is my daughter just stops, looks at this child, puts both of her hands out and starts walking towards the child. And I go, no, 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 this is not your baby. Let's keep walking. That was the moment where I started realizing, okay, this child actually sees things that we don't
Uh-huh.
see. This
Right.
child is more aware than we think it is. It's because of the fact that we raised her as a global citizen, just like you
Yes.
raised your daughters as global citizens. They are more aware than most people twice their age.
Yeah.
And that's the secret of success in this life. It's not about what university is on your degree and how many degrees you have. That's part of it. It's not about how smart you are and how much what your SAT scores were. That's part of it. It's not about how hard you're working. That's part of it. It's about how aware you are.
Hmm.
At that moment, how aware are you of what's happening around you? And
Right.
how aware are you to make sure that no matter what's happening, you're not going to be scared? You know,
Exactly. 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 I have intentionally, when my kids were actually pretty little, I knew where they were, but they were lost from me. But I could
hmm
still see them, but they didn't know that. And I didn't rush to let them know. I
hmm
let them be lost for a minute.
hmm
Um, Mostly to teach them a lesson that they should keep their eye on me, but
Right.
also to let them know that they were going to be okay. You probably have had that
I
same situation with
100%,
your kids.
100%. You
Yeah.
you stop and just, yeah, exactly.
You have
You
to
can
let
still
them
see
be
them.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know they're going to be okay. You
Mhm.
know they're there. I remember when my son, it's a bit of a different scenario, but same message. My son is
Mhm.
big into sports.
Mhm.
So when we sat down to play sports, I told him, I said, I'm going to do my best to not be that dad.
Mm.
right? I said, I'm ultra competitive. I will do my best to not be that dad.
Mm-hmm.
But I need you to promise me just three things. I don't care what sport you play, just promise me three things. One, no matter what happens, you get up. No matter what happens, you have to get up. If you hurt your leg, you hurt something, get up. You have to find
Yeah.
a way to get up, right? Don't let people come out there and try to carry you up. Get up. You have to find, unless you physically cannot get up, you
Mm-hmm.
have to get up. Two, you have to endure. If it calls for running, run. If it calls for walking, walk. If it calls for sprinting, sprint. But you have to endure. You can't be tired.
Yeah.
You have to endure, right? And I'm not saying you don't get tired. I'm saying you can't just randomly be tired. You have to be willing to dig deep to be able to find what's required, right? Because if you
Mm-hmm.
dig deep, you'll overcome that fear. And the third thing I told him was you got to listen. You've got to lead. If you can only lead if you listen, but you've got to be able to hear what's happening. Hearing and listening are two completely different things. If you're listening to somebody, great. But if you're actually hearing them, you're understanding where what's needed. I said, if you want to be a natural leader, that's what comes in. And I just stopped, and he would, I remember he would at one point he had fallen. Some kid had pulled him down and kicked him
Mm-hmm.
as he went down. I didn't rush over to him. Didn't rush. I just
Yeah,
stepped
no.
there and waited. He was scared first. I kept looking at me, and he was scared, and he kept looking at me. And then he got up. Then he understood what was happening, and then he started then understanding. It was funny. We had one match, and there was these two adult, I guess dads or something, or they were talking and completely unaware. They were talking trash about my son, unaware that I was standing right
Oh.
next to them, listening to everything.
Uh,
I didn't say anything.
yeah.
I watched the game finish, right? I watched the match finish, didn't say anything. I walk up to my son. I go, hey, by the way, these two guys next to me. He goes, Dad, I heard him.
He heard them.
I'm like,
Wow.
Dad, I heard him. He goes, what do you mean you heard him? He goes, the kid I was playing against? Yeah. He goes, that was his son. I go, okay. I understand.
Oh, okay.
That kid on that is the same kid who called my son an N-word
Oh.
on that field. Same kid. And he goes,
Uh,
and that he was so aware, he ignored what this kid told him and was listening to what this dad was saying about how he's small and slow and this, and you can take him and whatnot. He was becoming that dad that I promised I would never be.
yeah.
And I all I said was, hey, these two guys over here. I said, just so you know. He goes, I heard him. I
Mm-hmm.
said, you did. And he goes, why do you think I was motivated? I said, okay,
Yeah.
got you. Got
Yeah.
you.
Awesome.
That's what we have to take away from this
Yes.
is that our kids are always listening. And if we want to raise global citizens, it's not what they say or do, it's what they don't say. It's what they actually don't do, but they are thinking of doing. That's what you
Mm-hmm.
got to pay attention to.
That's right.
That's the main thing. So,
Right.
and much
And
like
you,
you've done with your daughters.
yeah, it's fun. I just
Yeah,
say I stay out of their way.
that's it.
I gave them bumpers. If they had some rails, I think of, in the
Yeah.
bowling alley, how they put the bumpers up for the
Yep.
little kids.
Yep.
So they bounced off those and they're
Yeah.
pretty wide, but you know,
We had this conversation with my son. I'm sure similar to what you had with your daughter. So it was with the son. He was talking about his workload. He goes, I got this so much I have to do and
mm,
whatnot. And I told him, I said, you know why all this work is being handed to you? He's like, it's to teach me a lesson about life. I go, and he said it very like, just dismissively.
yeah.
I said, no, it's about the next 12 months. He goes, what do you mean? I said, 50% of students who go to university, and this is a statistical fact, Harvard Business Review talked about this,
Hmm.
50% of students who go to school, freshman year, they flunked out.
Hmm.
50%. It's not because they're not smart. They're incredibly smart.
Hmm.
It's not that they're not willing to work. It's that they don't know how to. They are
Hmm.
so overwhelmed by just the barrage of pending things aimed at them. And I explained to him, I said, you're not one of them. You're being hit with all this coursework and everything else you're doing between your job and your clubs and everything else and whatnot. You're being hit with this because if you can manage this and you can balance this, you're prepared for college. And then
Oh,
you're
for
prepared for
sure.
life. Right.
Yeah.
And once I gave him the 50% stat, he goes, is that real? I said, that's a real stat. 50% of students who will graduate high school with a 4.0 or higher with unweighted will end up less than a 1.9 by the time
Mhm.
their freshman year is over. And it has nothing to do with book smarts.
Mm-mm.
It's because their method, their process for how they approach things was never the right process to begin with. It was too, yes, too much of a silo. It was too unilateral. It was too much of a
Yep.
silo. Everything was about books, 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 books. Whereas
Time
other things,
management
mm,
and
right. Uh-huh.
personal management. I mean, just God, just getting up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do
Getting
your
up.
kids, although I mean, my kids had a different high school experience because they went away for the last 2 years of high school. There's a public boarding, the
Mhm.
science and math governor's school that they both went to. And so they were responsible from 11th grade on for getting themselves up.
There you
And they don't wake them up.
go.
I did up until they were in 10th grade, which I really didn't do them any favors. But yeah,
Mm-mm.
my younger one slept through an exam and,
Oh,
you know, but I tell you what, she didn't sleep through any others after
nope.
that. So,
They learned a
but yeah,
lesson.
those are the kind of things I think, to
Yeah.
prepare for college, we as parents can't keep rescuing our kids.
No, 100%. And that's where the 252 days comes from, right?
Mhm.
You spend our whole life preparing our kids for life through all of our different procedures through life, right? All of our
Mhm.
agendas, all of our rituals that we have every single day. But taking those vacations with them, where you're allowing them to be completely independent, to start making decisions, and to be alert. You're watching what they're seeing. That's huge right there.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's what you want to look after. That's
It's
always, always the key.
It's true, and it gives
Yeah,
you a glimpse into who they're going to be as
absolutely.
adults when you're raising
Absolutely.
them. So
This is how you raise global citizens, right?
it is.
It's not about their grades. That's part of it. Again, we give a whole list of all the things that's part of it. It's about being aware,
Hmm.
because they are definitely listening to everything that's happening around them. So I close with this. We have 252 days. That's our 4 seconds. In wildebeest time, that's 4 seconds.
Hmm.
That's our 4 seconds to be able to shape our children. 252 days from the age of 6 until 18, where you are able to shape who they're going to be. The 252 days. These 252 days, if used wisely, will turn your child into something that is completely out of this world. And that's important.
Hmm. It's true.
That's it.
I love it. You're so wise.
Likewise. You see what I did there?
I liked it. All right. Well, this has been terrific. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ashish.
Oh, my pleasure. And to those of us, those of you that are listening, thank you. We've had such an amazing growth curve on our listener base. Thank you so much for supporting us. And as we say all the time, this podcast is about big successes in small places. Be the success that you want to be in your location. Be the success. Reflect who you want others to be. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.